I'm so glad you're here today. My name's Gary. I'm the pastor here at Aspire Church San Marco. If I didn't get a chance to meet you before, really glad that you are part of our service today. You did pick an unusual day because we do call this Hay Day. We don't always talk with Southern draws or wear flannel or have cowboy hats on. But every now and then we break out the name tags, and it's just a good chance to get to say hey to each other, get to know some new names and faces. We've had so many new folks coming into our community over the last few years that from time to time it's just a great way to get reconnected. And so we're glad that you are here today. You're also jumping in the middle of a series that we are calling The Digital Dilemma. And we have been looking at something super practical when it comes to our digital devices and how much it has really radically changed our lives. It's really changed society in pretty dramatic ways, more so than almost anything has changed us, maybe going back as far as the printing press in the 15th century. Some would argue that it's even more radical than that, the way it's changed our Bibles, or changed our life and our communities, and it's even having an impact on our faith. And so we've taken a few weeks to take a look at this dilemma, and it is a dilemma because the reality is we live in this age and this period where phones and devices and technology is a part of our life, and that's not bad. It's made a lot of things better in many ways, and so we're not saying we deny technology or we try to extract it from our lives. That's just not practical or realistic. But what we are saying is the dilemma is how it has come in and become a distraction for us in our relationships with each other, relationships in our walk with the Lord. And so what can we do in this dilemma to try to put it in the right perspective? And what does the Bible have to say to us about this? Now, I was thinking about this. How many of you in here are fans of The Office? Anybody raise your hand if you're a fan of the TV show The Office? Okay, not as many as I thought. So if you're a fan of The Office, you know Dwight Schrute on The Office. Some of you may have an image of Dwight in your mind. Dwight, before we knew about Dwight Schrute, Sherry and I worked for him. We didn't know that was his personality, but we had a manager of a store that we worked for who, if you can think of Dwight, you are thinking of our manager. His name was Mike Stone, and he was a fun guy. We really enjoyed working with him and learned a lot. This was back when we worked at the Regency Square Mall. For some of you, like I know we're dating ourselves, and it was actually not only did we work at Regency Square Mall, but it was still cool. The Regency Square Mall was still cool back then, and so that's where we worked. And we worked at this little gift store, and this was before online ordering. So everybody, I know this is going to be shocking to some of you, but like when you wanted to shop, you actually had to go to a store, and you had to like look around and you pick the item out, and if they didn't have it in stock, you just had to go home without it and come back later and hope they had it. So in this particular store, there was a lot of phone business, and like people were calling to sales on the phone because they would want to buy something that we had and us to put it on hold for them. So we would get phone customers calling in, again, before the internet. And so Mike would always, if we were in the store and there were people in the store who were like in-person customers, and we were on the phone with somebody trying to buy something on the phone, he would lose his mind. Like he'd be like, you should always prioritize the customer who's in the store. You tell the person on the phone, you'll call them back. Make the person who is there the priority. Make the person who is there the priority. Well, fast forward and all the technological advances we have, that advice was so important, and it is even more important now. I'll never forget when my kids were smaller, they were all living at home, and one time we're having a conversation and I was responding to a text message, and I heard one of my kids say to another one of my kids, "Oh, don't talk to Dad right now because he can't talk and text at the same time." I was prioritizing the person on the phone more than I was prioritizing the person who's present. I mean, Mike's words were like in my mind. And so as we started this digital dilemma, I have been looking a lot at my own habits and my own patterns with using my phone, not particularly proud of a lot of those habits and patterns. And when we kicked the series off, I made some confessions about my phone usage. And so my son, who listened to the podcast, he texted me, he called me after he listened to the podcast, and he's like, "Hey, Dad, great message. When you were talking about the way you use your phone, I thought you were going to tell this story, and you didn't." I'm like, "Oh no, what is it?" And he said, "You remember that time we were all on family vacation, and Noah, who's my grandson, and Noah took his first steps, and you were on your phone?" And I'm like, "I was trying to open my camera app." It is so important that we prioritize the person who is with us physically over the virtual presence of people who are on our devices. So this idea, this simple idea that goes back to my college days with a store manager, is more pertinent today than it's ever been. Our digital habits are shaping who we are becoming. And it's shaping our families, and it's shaping our culture and our society, and people are noticing. Your family notices how you use your phone, even if you don't. In fact, I would say your family probably notices more how you use your phone than you do. And they are aware of the way it's shaping you in ways that you might not be aware of the way it's shaping you. So your habits are ultimately what end up shaping your life. And many of your habits are being shaped by the device that you are carrying around in your pocket. Your attention is being formed by what is in your pocket. Your phone is constantly drawing your attention away from the physical reality and into a virtual world. It's shaping your imagination. In fact, many people find it hard to have an imagination today because we don't have to imagine anything. We just go to our phone, we go online, and we Google it, and we see the image. We don't have to imagine. And so it's shaping our imaginations, our creativity. It's shaping your relationships. It's shaping the most intimate relationships you have. It's shaping how you parent and how you interact with your kids. And it's shaping your spouse, with your spouse and your marriage. It's shaping how we worship. It's shaping your emotional life and your prayer life. The phone is having a profound impact on all of us. And so this isn't necessarily just a sermon series that's trying to say, hey, phones are bad. We realize they're a part of our life, but we have to pay attention to how these devices are shaping us and transforming us and be aware of that change so that we can react and we can respond. Author Andrew Sullivan wrote an article, and in this article he talked about what our phones are doing to our souls, and I found several quotes pretty interesting, but listen to this, listen to a little piece of this article. He says, modernity has slowly weakened spirituality. So talking about our modern world, it is slowly weakening our spirituality by design and by accident. And it's doing it in favor of commerce, selling stuff to you. It downplays silence and mere being in favor of being in favor of noise and constant action. So the idea that you can take a walk and just be quiet, that's gone. Like it's constantly, devices are constantly pulling for your attention, trying to sell you something. And then he said this, the reason we live in a culture increasingly without faith is not because science has somehow disproved the unprovable, but because the white noise of secularism has removed the very stillness in which it might endure and be reborn. The white noise of secularism. That we live in such a constant state of distraction and noise that it is preventing us from being still long enough so that our faith can continue to grow and endure or, in fact, be reborn. And he goes on, and yet our need for quiet has never fully gone away because our practical achievements, however spectacular, never quite fulfill us. They are always giving way to new wants and needs, always requiring updating or repairing, always falling short. The mania of our online lives reveals this. We keep swiping and swiping and swiping because we are never fully satisfied. That Judeo-Christian tradition recognized a critical distinction and tension between noise and silence, between getting through the day and getting a grip on one's whole life. And then he talks about the church. He says, if the churches came to understand that the greatest threat to faith today is not hedonism, but distraction, perhaps they might begin to appeal anew to a frazzled digital generation. We live in a frazzled digital generation. And the world is seeking some response. It's seeking peace, it's seeking wholeness, it's seeking presence, and it doesn't know how to find it. And this author's argument is churches need to recognize this. Churches need to understand that the greatest threat to faith today isn't hedonism or secularism, it is distraction. And so today I want us to look at just a couple verses in your Bible. If you have a Bible, open with me to the book of 1 Peter chapter 5. It's towards the back of the Bible. There's a Bible printed Bible in front of you if you want to use one of those. If you don't own a print Bible, feel free to take that as our gift. We'll also put these verses on the screen. When we talk about the Christian life, many times we use the analogy of a journey, right? We talk about going on the Christian journey. We talk about walking with Jesus. What we fail to sometimes recognize is that journey is through a battlefield. That journey is through a minefield. We are navigating life, and there is constant warfare and landmines all around as we're trying to follow Jesus. And Peter, who is one of Jesus' disciples, understood this. He understood that we are navigating treacherous times. And so he himself had fallen short in his journey with Jesus. You remember Peter was the guy when Jesus said, "Hey, who do people say that I am?" And the disciples answered, "Some say you're, a prophet, some say you're a great teacher." And Jesus said, "Who do you say that I am?" And Peter's response was, "You're the Christ, the Son of the living God." And like Peter's brash and he's bold. He's the one who stepped out of the boat and tried to walk on the water. This is Peter. But Peter is also the guy who Jesus warned. He said, "Hey, before the rooster crows in the morning, you're going to deny me 3 times. He had that warning, and yet what happened? Just hours before Jesus was crucified, Peter denied Jesus 3 times, just like he said he would. That Peter was on a journey, and he failed to see the landmines that were all around. But he's an older man by the time he wrote this letter. He's writing back to younger believers, and he's giving them advice that was really relevant to them in the first century. But I think it's really relevant to us today. And here's what he said in 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 8. Be sober-minded, be watchful. Be sober-minded, be watchful. Now, what does that mean? What does it mean to be sober-minded? Well, it means that your mind is not distracted. Your mind is not numbed. Your mind is alert and aware of what's going on. Be watchful. Know what is happening around you. This is the advice he's giving. This is practical advice. This is useful advice. And even if you're here today and you don't believe in Jesus, you know and have come to accept there are times in your world where it is really important to be sober-minded, to be watchful. For example, there's been a big campaign against distracted driving, right? What are they saying about distracted driving? They're saying, hey, you need to be watchful when you're in your car. Don't be looking at your phone. Don't be doing other things. Pay attention to the road. What are they saying? They're saying, be sober-minded, be watchful. Now, Peter's talking about something much broader than just that time that you're in your car. He's talking about life in general. You need to be sober-minded to be watchful. Why? Why? And here's what he says next. Because your adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion seeking someone to devour. So he goes right to the point here. He's saying you need to be sober-minded and you need to be watchful because you have an enemy. You have an adversary who is constantly seeking to upend your life. He's constantly seeking to destroy you. He's seeking someone to devour, and you need to be aware of this. Now, I know it's very tempting in 2026 to say, come on now, aren't we sort of over this whole thing about the devil, this sort of caricature we have of the devil and, with a tail and a pitchfork and he's wearing a red suit. I'm like, no, if that's your idea of the devil, he is already deceiving you. You are already not paying attention. Because C.S. Lewis said there are 2 mistakes when it comes to the devil. One is to act like he doesn't exist at all and just completely dismiss him. And the other is to pay so much attention to him and to be so afraid of him that you're distracted from actually living your life. And Lewis said the devil is actually fine if you make either one of those mistakes. He's fine with either mistake. Our society, our sort of modern society, we've sort of made the first mistake, I think, more often. We aren't even aware that there is an adversary, that there is a devil. And in so doing, we have completely failed to see that he is prowling around seeking people to devour. This isn't just metaphorical language. It's a warning from a pastor to young believers. And here's what he's saying. You have a real enemy with real strategies. You have a real enemy with real strategies that is going about seeking to upend your life, seeking to destroy relationships, seeking to disconnect you from the very source of life itself. And here's the problem. Most Christians today are not alert. They're not sober-minded. They're not aware. They're not watchful. Not because they don't love God, but because they are distracted. Because we are so distracted. We're living spiritually ambushed lives, not by big dramatic sins, but by tiny glowing screens that are constantly pulling us out of the present and pulling us into a virtual world. And so we find ourselves in a situation where time and again, the schemes of an enemy that we fail to see are working, and they're sowing seeds of destruction in our marriages, with our parenting, in our society, and in our culture. The enemy, listen, the enemy does not need you to reject Jesus. The enemy only needs you to scroll yourself into numbness. The enemy doesn't need you to walk away from the church. The enemy just needs you to keep swiping and to keep thinking that something you're looking for, the thing that your soul is longing for, will be found if you scroll long enough. This is the scheme of the enemy. Distractions are not harmless. They are a strategy. And this is what the enemy is seeking to do in our lives and in our families. You have a real enemy, and he has real strategies. My question for you today is, do you have a strategy to deal with the enemy? That's what this entire series has actually been about. How do we walk together in the digital age to find strategies to be aware of what the enemy is seeking to steal from us, what he is seeking to kill, and what he is destroying? And Satan's primary strategy is to exploit your weaknesses. This is the way he works. This is why Paul said in 2 Corinthians 2:11, "Don't be outwitted by Satan, for we are not ignorant of his schemes." Paul is saying the same thing that Peter said, that the enemy has schemes. He is seeking someone to devour, seeking someone to destroy. And Paul is saying, don't be outwitted by those schemes. This idea of schemes are strategies that he is using. The enemy has studied your patterns and knows them better than you do. The enemy understands your temptations. What are your greatest temptations? Have you ever noticed on social media or online anywhere, if you start one search, then suddenly everything in your feeds are about that one thing? That's exactly how the enemy works. The enemy knows what your weakness is, and the enemy is going to keep feeding you that temptation and that weakness over and over and over again. The enemy knows your insecurities, and so the enemy is going to keep bringing those insecurities up and reinforcing those insecurities. The enemy knows that you don't want to be bored and has somehow convinced us that boredom is bad. The enemy knows your anxieties, your exhaustion, and your avoidance habits. Come on. You've got avoidance habits. We all do. You know what they are? Avoidance habit is something that you do to avoid doing something you don't want to do. So you know there's something you ought to do, and instead of doing that thing, you just sort of move into whatever that avoidance habit is. Maybe it's a game on your phone. Maybe it's social media. Maybe it's reading. Maybe it's TV. Maybe it doesn't even necessarily have to be a bad thing. But what are your avoidance habits? The enemy knows what they are, and the enemy wants to keep you going to those. He uses all of these to pull you away from God. That's what he's seeking to do. And one of my favorite books is Screwtape Letters. If you haven't read it, I would encourage you to read C.S. Lewis's. It's a fictional book. It's a story of, it's actually a series of letters that are written by a senior demon to a junior demon. And the senior demon is trying to teach the junior demon how to effectively tempt people. And so in one of these letters, the senior demon writes to the junior demon, and this is what he says: "It is funny how mortals always picture us as putting things into their minds. In reality, our best work is done by keeping things out. We keep them busy in the non-essentials of life and invent innumerable schemes to occupy their minds." It's almost like C.S. Lewis knew what an iPhone was, which he didn't. This was written so long before that. But what is this saying? This is saying, hey, the enemy's not just trying to put false ideas and lies in your head. The enemy is also trying to keep things out of your mind, trying to keep you distracted, trying to keep you away from what's really going on in your heart. And so when you're feeling anxious, when you're feeling worried, and you pick up your pacifier and you scroll on it, rather than actually saying, God, what is this I'm feeling right now? What's actually going on in my marriage? What's going on with my kids? I don't like the way that feels. So what do? I just stick out my pacifier and stick it in my mouth, right? I mean, that's what we're doing. We're pacifying ourselves, and this is a scheme that the enemy has. And the point is clear. The devil doesn't always try to frighten you. The devil often is merely trying to distract you, and devices are the easiest distraction that we've ever given him. You have a real enemy, and he's got real strategies. You need a strategy to deal with the enemy. So I want to share with you right now 4 steps to meaningful connection with God, because I think this combats the lies that we're being told about our digital dependence on our devices. So let me give you 4 steps to meaningful connection with God. Now, for some of us who are on this digital fast, we've been doing this now. Today is day 15 of 28 days. Others, you're here for the first time and you're just hearing this, and we're glad you are. You can start at any time. We've got some digital workbooks, fast workbooks that are available as you leave out the doors. You can pick that up on your way out. Some of you have been coming week after week, but you still haven't started your fast. It's okay. I'm glad you keep showing up anyway. You can start at any time. You can start with your small group. You can start with your family. We want you to be a part of this. But here's one of the things that I've noticed in some conversations I've had with some folks who have been doing this for a while. There's sort of stages that we go through as we're going through this digital fast that you might be experiencing or you will experience as you go through it. But they also correspond, I think, to these 4 steps to a meaningful connection with God. The first stage is detaching from the noise. Detaching from the noise. Now, some of you, for the first few days of your digital fast, maybe the first week, that sudden silence created kind of almost a withdrawal symptom in you. Like you're grabbing for your phone out of just a reflex, and you're realizing your phone's not there. You're feeling an itch to check your email 25 times a day because you can't check social media right now, so you're checking email instead. All of this is sort of part of that detachment that takes place, but it's important for you to know that a meaningful connection to God also requires a detachment from the noise that is constantly around us. If you are somebody who constantly needs the TV on or you constantly needs noise in the background, my question for you is why? Why? There's something about silence, there's something about stillness that is essential for giving God the space to actually speak to our hearts. And we live in a very noisy world. You need to detach from the noise. The second step to meaningful connection with God is to discover discomfort. And come on, none of us want to discover discomfort. We are constantly seeking ways to be comfortable. And probably in the second week of your fast, you begin to realize that maybe you don't actually need to know what everybody on your social media feed is eating, or where they're going on vacation, or what they've done, or what they're posting. Maybe you don't need to know the latest thing that Donald Trump or somebody else has posted on X or on their feed. Discovering that you can be more focused. But sometimes that requires a level of discomfort. And maybe in that time, creativity starts to return as you give space to imagine, to dream, to wonder again. But part of your connection with God is going to require you to go through some uncomfortable things, to have some uncomfortable conversations. Discover discomfort is critical to make a connection with God. The third thing, and hopefully some of you, as we've entered into the third week of the digital fast, are discovering this, and that is you delight in presence. Maybe you are beginning to experience a deeper presence with God. You're beginning to reflect more with Him. You're okay with silence. Your arm isn't twitching to pull up your phone all the time now. You're beginning to relax, finding more peace. I've had several conversations with people who said, at first it was really hard, but now I'm finding there's so much more peace. I'm noticing my anxiety levels going down. I'm being creative again. I picked up some habits again where I'm enjoying some of the creativity that maybe I haven't done in a while. Some people are discovering, hey, this is like going back to 1996. Some of you weren't even born in 1996. But there were some really good things about 1996 when it comes to just not being distracted by so much technology. And so discovering delight and delighting in the presence of God. And then finally, determining new patterns. Determining new patterns. Once you have sort of detached from the noise, once you've gone through the discomfort, once you discover God's presence, then it's really important that you say, okay, how can I begin to change my pattern of living so that I can continue to grow deeper in my relationship with Christ, deeper in my relationship with my friends and my family. And that's really what I want to talk about for the last few minutes that we have today. Because on these last half of our digital fast, you're going to have to make a decision. What will my new relationship with my phone be after the fast is over? How am I going to relate to my phone on day 29 of the fast? Most people that I've talked to, a lot of people have said, I'm not going back to the way it was. Other people have said, I cannot wait to get back in TikTok. Some people just cannot wait. You're still itching to get back on whatever your favorite distracting app was. But for a lot of us, we realize, I don't want to go back. I don't want this just to be 28 days. I want to set a new pattern. The fast has revealed what has quietly taken over: anxiety, compulsive checking, comparison, mindless scrolling, boredom numbing, social disconnection, spiritual dullness. But now, with a little bit of clarity, with a little bit of excitement, maybe about what life can be like, maybe now that you're sober-minded, maybe now that you're watchful, this is a critical moment for us to begin to pay attention and to set a plan. Peter says in 1 Peter 5:9, resist the devil, stand firm in the faith. Resist the devil, stand firm in the faith. So how do we do that? How do we resist? How do you stay awake? How do you remain spiritually alert after the fast ends? Well, I want to talk to you about something that we have talked about at Aspire many times. It's called a rule of life. Some of you have heard that phrase before. For others, that is a new word. And quite honestly, some of you are like, right away, I'm in church, they're talking about rules, I don't want to listen to this. This is not about legalism. Rule doesn't mean law. Rule actually comes from a Latin word that refers to a trellis. So if any of you have ever gone to wine country or been anywhere where there are grapevines, you'll know that the farmers and the vine dressers actually build a trellis that the vines grow on. Because naturally, a grapevine would grow on the ground, and it's subject to all kinds of diseases, and the fruit isn't as good, it's not as productive. And so over the years, what people have learned, what farmers have learned, is you build these trellises for the vines to grow on, and you give some structure to the vine, and as you do, the vines are more productive, they're healthier. And so a rule of life is basically a trellis for your spiritual development. A rule of life is a set of intentional practices that help your soul grow towards Jesus. How do you put those practices in place? For some of you growing up, you grew up with something called a quiet time. Anybody ever hear quiet time growing up in church? Yeah, you need a quiet time. Yeah, quiet time is great, and I hope you have one. The problem with the quiet time is it made us think that somehow we just checked the box, right? I had my 15-minute quiet time with God, and now I'm going to spend the rest of my day doing what I normally do, my old patterns, my old habits. A rule of life is different in that, yes, quiet time should be a part of it, but a rule of life says, no, I'm going to set a structure across my life to say, this is how I want to grow closer to Jesus in my work life, in my private life, in my family, in everything I'm doing. How do I continue to grow closer to Him? How do I build a framework or a rhythm, setting limits for myself that I'm going to live within in order to find peace and find grace with God? So whether you've already named it or not, the truth is, all of you in here, you might say, well, this is the first time I've ever heard of this. I don't have a rule of life. I don't want a rule of life. But let me just tell you, you already have one. Everybody in this room already has a rule of life. You wake up in the morning, right? And you pick up your phone and you look to see what time it is and you hit snooze, right? Or you open a social media app and you scroll to see if somebody responded to the thing you posted. Or you open a news app or you open the weather app. Like, you've got something on your phone already. You've got a rule of life that you are living by. You get up, you have coffee. You maybe read some news or you watch some news, you get in your car, you drive, you listen to music or you listen to a podcast or an audiobook, you get to work, you go through your routine, at the end of the day you go home, you have dinner, like you do what you do. You have a rule of life. And can I just tell you that your life that you are living is a product of your rule of life. Like, there are circumstances that happen beyond any of our control, but for the most part, the life that you're living is a byproduct of this pattern that you've set in your life. So a rule of life just simply says, can I intentionally set a pattern for my life that moves me closer to Jesus, that moves me closer to the person, to the man, to the woman that I know He is calling me to be? So the question is not whether you have one or not, but the question is your current rule forming you towards Jesus, or is it moving you away from Jesus? Are you moving closer to him, or are you moving further away? Are the habits of your phone making you more like Jesus or less like Jesus? And if the answer is less like Jesus, then I want to invite you not just to take a 28-day fast, but to consider drafting a digital rule of life. I want you to draft it, and I want you to share it. And the reason I say share it is because if you don't share it, you will not do it. Because we all need accountability. So inside your worship guide this morning, we gave you this worksheet that says My Digital Rule of Life. Now, if you were with us for the first week of this series, we gave you a different worksheet about how to set up your 28-day digital fast. This worksheet is basically saying, how am I going to set a digital rule of life so that will carry me beyond the 28 days? And you can take that and use that with your family, use it with your small group, but draft it and share it. And this is a set of boundaries, some rhythms, some commitments that you're going to live by after the 28-day digital fast. And I want to just walk through some of this with you. And I know this may seem incredibly myopic, it may seem small, but I am convinced that what Andrew Sullivan said is true, that we live in a digitally frazzled world. And that we as the church need to begin to start offering some direction for people, for some patterns that they can change in order to find greater connection with their families, and most importantly, greater connection with God. So let me just go through these quickly with you, and I'm going to encourage you to get in a small group. If you're not in a small group, find one so that you can walk through this as a community, certainly as a family. The first one, healthy phone routines. Healthy phone routines. And we listed some of these out for you, but let me just go through a couple of these things. First of all, you need to ask the question, what is the primary purpose of my phone? What is the primary purpose of my phone? Now, I'm old enough to remember when the primary purpose of a phone was to make a phone call. In fact, that's all you could do on the phone was make a phone call. Now, for most of us, phone calls are probably the thing that we do the least on our phones. We text, we get online, we send emails, we do all kinds of other things on our phones. But you need to ask yourself, what is the primary purpose? Is it a tool or is it your entertainment? Is it primarily for work and productivity and communication? Or is it your source of relationships and connections? And here's the thing, if your phone is the primary source of your relationships and your connections, get ready, you are in trouble. Because those relationships and connections are not real and will not sustain you when you go through the challenges of life. You need real connections. So what is the primary purpose of your phone? Where will I charge it at night? I know for many families with kids, and if you've got kids old enough and they've got devices, they've got a pattern of charging all the phones together so that the phones go to bed at night and they're charging overnight and kids don't have the phones in their rooms or available to them. When will I look at it in the morning? Is it the first thing you look at? Do you move it down on your priority list? What time will I put it away at night? Your phone needs a bedtime, and it doesn't need to be your bedtime. It needs to be at least earlier than your bedtime. Some of you, your phone's bedtime is after your bedtime because you're going to sleep with that thing already working or saying or whatever it's doing. So I would just encourage you, what is your phone's bedtime? Where will my phone be during meals, during family time, during meetings, on car rides? Where will my phone be? In what situations will I not use my phone? That I'm just not going to use my phone. Which apps are unhealthy for me personally? Now, not every app is unhealthy for everybody, but there are unhealthy apps, and you need to know what those are, and you need to probably delete those from your devices. Second, community considerations. What are some considerations when it comes to your family, when your community? First of all, how will I model healthy phone use in front of my kids? Such an important question. How are you modeling the way to use a device with your kids? How will I honor people I'm with by putting my phone away so that you are physically present? I'm hearing the voice of Mike Stone in my head. Prioritize the customer who's in the store. That's what you need to do. Prioritize the people who are right in front of you. What phone expectations will we set as a family? This is really important because in your home, there should be expectations, and they should apply to everybody. How do we set expectations for how we're going to use the phone in our family? Let me share with you some best practices. First, create a recurring schedule for powering down your phone. I talked to one of my prayer partners this morning was telling me that they've started in their home the pattern of when his wife gets home from work, the phones go away. They're put up in the room and charged, and they don't use them anymore. And I thought that's such a great pattern. Create a recurring schedule for powering down. The last hour before bed, make it phone free. This isn't just about religious people or this because of spirituality. Neuroscientists and people who study sleep have said that you will sleep better if you are not looking at a screen the last hour before you go to bed. So maybe set that bedtime for your phone an hour before. First hour after waking up should be phone free. Use an alarm clock. Anybody remember an alarm clock? Yeah, so that your phone isn't right there on your nightstand. Your phone can be somewhere else, but use an alarm clock. Minimize the number of apps on your phone. Turn off notifications. Wait 10 to 15 minutes before responding to a text, unless it's your wife. Don't wait 10 or 15 minutes if it's her. Always respond right away. I'm working on it. I'm trying. Take a weekly Sabbath from screens. Establish no phone zones, bedrooms, dinner table, car, church. If dependent or addicted, seek accountability. You think, wow, that's kind of dramatic. But if research is right, more than half of you in this room right now have an addiction or a dependency on your device. It's just true. And you need to get some people around you to offer some accountability to help you get through that. Organize your app. This comes from Catherine Price. She makes some suggestions. Let me just share these with you. On your menu bar, only have essential utilities like your phone, your message, your calendar, your wallet. On your home screen, only tools, things like your map, your photos, your notes, your banking, weather. On your secondary screen, your email and your junk food apps. I don't really know what junk food apps are. Like I do have, I'm ashamed to say this, I do have the McDonald's app on my phone, so I think that's probably a junk food app. But Chick-fil-A app on your phone, yeah, ooh. I'm like, wait, that's Jesus chicken though. I don't know, but I still think it's a junk food app. I think there's, on your third screen, your utilities and your undeletables, those things that you can't get rid of, they're factory set. And then delete slot machine apps. Delete slot machine apps. Anything that triggers endless scrolling or swiping, just get rid of it off your phone. If you need those, if you want those social media accounts, make yourself go to a laptop where it's not as easy to use them and it's also not as easy to stay on them. So just some ideas there. And finally, let me just give you an example of what a digital rule of life might look like. No devices in bedrooms. Delete junk food apps. Turn off notifications. No phones at meals. No phones used in cars. Use grayscale. Become a screen time Jedi using focus modes. I think that's a feature on iPhone. But become a screen time Jedi. One screen at a time. No phones at kids' events except for your camera. Now, these are not meant to be rigid rules. We're not being legalistic here. We are simply trying to build a structure about how you use your phone that will help your phone become something that actually moves you closer to Jesus, closer to the relationships that are important to you, and not further away from them. Remember what Peter said, resist the devil, stand firm in the faith. Why? Because you have an enemy, and he has a plan, and most of you don't have a plan, and I'm begging you, develop a plan. Come up with a plan that you can be able to be aware of these temptations that are around you because your soul is at stake, because your relationships are at stake, because your attention is at stake, your children's formation and your relationship with them is at stake, your marriage is at stake, and your presence with God is at stake. He is present, and he is wanting you to be present with him, but we have to manage how we are relating to the digital world in order to not be distracted away from him. The digital fast will clear your mind, and it can potentially awaken your heart. But now, as we're halfway through and as we're coming to the end, is the time to establish permanent rhythms that will keep you alert, that will keep you sober-minded, that will keep you awake to God, that will keep you resisting the lies and the enemy's schemes. I'm hearing so many great testimonies of people who are experiencing greater presence in their relationships. I was talking to somebody, and it was a husband and wife, and one member of the couple said, I've quit doing this one app, and I feel so much better. And right over that spouse's shoulder, the other spouse was going like this. because that spouse could see the difference, and it was making a difference in their relationships, more human, but most importantly, to have more time for Jesus, to draw closer to him and to live the life he has for you. Listen, you were made for a real life in a real world with real people. And so now is the time, now is the opportunity to put our devices in their proper place as the tools they were meant to be and not as the pacifiers that they have become, so that we can find the full, abundant life in Jesus that we were meant to live. I'm going to invite you to bow your heads and pray with me. We're going to sing one more song today, and maybe today as we've shared, as you've gone through this digital fast, maybe you have just felt some of the things that I think many of us have felt. Some of the anxiety maybe has gotten worse, like you are confronting some feelings that you were avoiding, some relationships that you don't know how to navigate and you were just avoiding because you're just going to a device. And I know it's been hard for some of you. And to be honest, some of you have avoided doing the digital fast because of that. You haven't even gotten into it. That's okay. That's okay. There's grace. We're not trying to be legalistic about this at all. But for some of you today, maybe you realize that you need to make a change. You need to shift your thinking. You need to take your devices off the throne of your life and invite Jesus to take his place, his proper place. Because he's the only one that's going to actually give you the life that you're looking for. So I just want to invite you in this time, however the Spirit might be moving, to come forward. We can pray together. You can pray at these steps. You can stay right where you are. Maybe you use a communication card and you want to meet with somebody about getting some help. Maybe you've got an addiction to pornography that is just really controlling you and destroying your relationships. Maybe you are addicted to social media. Maybe you're addicted to gambling. And there's all kinds of things that our devices are bringing into our lives. And listen, the enemy knows your weakness. He knows where you're tempted. And so this is a plea from your pastor. Do not ignore this. Just like Peter was pleading, be alert, be watchful, be sober-minded.